The spirit of man's religion. I made that video last week talking about our perfection as far as being flawless was never required. Our perfection as far as never thinking anything wrong, never doing anything wrong, never saying anything wrong, that was never a requirement for getting into heaven. That was never biblically a requirement for being saved. When I made that video, you know what I found out? There's a lot of people who are trying to live a saved life, but they're doing it on their own. It's crazy how many people are about to miss heaven because they are trying to live a righteous life on their own. You got so many people who are about to go from church to hell because they are trying to live right without God. They are trying to live saved without God. They are trying to be righteous and be holy without God. When I think about the way I was raised, when I look back to the way I grew up, my parents didn't allow us to do a lot of things. My parents didn't allow us to have a lot of things. My parents did not allow us to hang around a lot of different people. My parents didn't allow us to go to parties. We wasn't allowed to play certain games. We almost wasn't allowed to do anything. So I grew up staying away from all kind of wrong. As a child now, think about this. I didn't do anything that you would consider to be a sin. I wasn't allowed to, and that's why I didn't do it. So when I got grown, I was still not doing all of those things. And I still didn't hang around crazy people. I still didn't do parties. I still didn't do the clubs. I still didn't do the smoking, the drinking, the hanging out. But the powerful question is, was I saved? Was I saved as a child when I wasn't allowed to do all of those things? Did that make me saved? Did not doing all of those things, that mean I was saved? When I got grown and still chose not to do any of those things, did that make me righteous? Does that mean I was righteous? No. Because no matter what you stay away from and don't do, it will never be enough to make you righteous according to God. You will look good in front of religious people. You will be righteous according to man's standards, but that does not make you righteous according to God. That's only by man's standards. That's the way the Pharisees tried to live their lives, and they thought they had something that they never had. So the scripture tells us that if our righteousness does not exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees, there is no way you're about to enter the kingdom of heaven. Think about that. That ain't me saying that. That's the Bible. If your righteousness does not exceed, if your righteousness is not greater than the righteousness of the Pharisees, if your righteousness does not outweigh man's righteousness, if your righteousness does not exceed the righteousness that man done made for you to live by, there is no way you will ever enter the kingdom of heaven. It's not enough. That is not the righteousness that God is expecting out of his people. When you look at the Pharisees and you look at the way they lived, they did a lot of things that was right. They did a lot of things. They believed in doing a lot of things that there is nothing wrong with. They believed in studying the scriptures. They believed in meditating on the scriptures day and night. They did things that were right. They obeyed the laws. They believed in washing their hands before they ate. But out of all of that, they still rejected the truth. They still rejected faith. They still rejected the work of Christ on the cross. So out of all of those things that they did that was good, it didn't matter because they rejected the truth. They rejected the one thing that they needed in order to be righteous in the eyes of God. The Pharisees had what religious folks want you to have, a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. If you are living by man's standards, if you are lining your life up with man's righteousness, you have a form of godliness, but you are denying the power thereof. And that's what we see today. That's what we see in religion. That's what we see taking place in most churches. People have a form of godliness, but they are denying the power of godliness. So they are doing what they're doing without God. They're attending church on a regular basis because they got church, but they don't got God. They are speaking in tongues, but they don't got God. They are preaching sermons without God. They are tithing and giving great offerings without God. They are doing a whole lot of praising, a whole lot of worshiping without God. According to religion, you look real good when you live that way. According to God, you are not righteous. You look real good in front of man when you're living that way. According to God, you are not getting into heaven. It's just a shame and it's pitiful to see anybody trying to live their lives lined up with man's religion, because you only have one easy responsibility, and that is to follow after God's righteousness. that is to live by God's system. And that's the question. Do you have the Spirit of God, or do you have the spirit of man's religion?